What's up, Sign folk? So today I'm going to be doing a normal print and cut procedure. My workflow, basically how I create the artwork, the file, get everything printed, get it laminated at the request of Don, and we're going to be doing some carpet decals. It's simple stuff. Basically, it's just a digital print, and we're going to laminate it and do a simple contour cut, trim them up, get them ready for packaging. Easy job. Stick with me and I'll show you my workflow. All right, guys, so step number one, obviously get our file that we're going to print. This job is for Elite Sonar, and they actually reached out to me because they found one of the carpet decal videos that I did a while back. They originally sent me a JPEG image that was not really adequate for the larger decals that they are looking for. So I went through and I created a vector rendering of their artwork originally. Created this all in Flexi. Took me about 35-40 minutes. It wasn't terribly bad, but this way, instead of dealing with the inconsistencies of customer supplied artwork, I did it right on my end so that I know that things will turn out the way that we intend them to. So, you know, I can set my colors and, you know, the scale, the sizing, nice crisp edges. You know, they're going to give these away to some of the individuals that they sponsor. So I want them as a representation of who I am and what I do. I want it to be first class. I want it to be the best that I can possibly do within my ability. So I recreated all this artwork. And that's key number one, making sure that the artwork is adequate for what you're printing. So we're going to be printing on the Substance 444. This is the high tack 3.2 mil gloss media with air release. I believe the 440 does not have the air release. The 444 does have the air release. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we will be laminating it with the 6100. This is the anti-slip. This is the 6 mil textured clear vinyl. Once it's laminated, we're going to put it in the cutter and then get a contour cut. So let's get some media loaded. For anyone watching, I like to use these Velcro straps. Basically, they're used to hold electrical cords. And they actually have the soft part so that it does not scratch the media. So we want to make sure that the media is actually loaded correctly in the printer. What I like to do is I put tension on the front side, and then I roll the holder backwards to about where I hit the front edge of the cover. To do that, I know that the media is square in the printer. Once I know that the media is square, I lower the media handle, and then the printer will come up, and then we need to load the material in there. So all we do is hit enter. Material is loaded. It gives me a media width, which is fine. Now when it says ready to print, I like to do one thing. On these printers, the way that the media is actually loaded, your print doesn't really start until it's back here. So what I like to do is, I know it's going to be difficult for you all to see this, I like to, by holding the arrows, I move the material back. You can see it kind of goes back there. And I roll it back to about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inches in front of the rollers. Back just a little bit more. This will save you a lot of material. This is about 3.5 to 4 inches of material. That little bit adds up. So this is how I start my prints. I make sure that the print head is in the high position. Close your cover, and it's ready to print. So now on the flexi end of things, I want to select my image, make sure that everything is selected. I double check my size, which is 14 by 14. You go up to the rip button. So one thing I'm going to add here. So as you can tell, I like to keep my media either covered in some sort of plastic. It does get a little dusty in here. So you either have to have one of these little Swiffers, which come in really, really handy, or there's some static rollers that you can take, roll across the media to get the dust and dirt and stuff like that off of the media before you print on it, because it does create dust marks. What I like to do is before the media is actually put into the printer, take your Swiffer and just go across some of those the surface area that wasn't wound. The parts that's covered up on the inside should be okay, but in this instance, I just take my Swiffer and Swiffer the media really quick. It just makes sure that you don't have any issues down the road. Okay, so now that we are in Flexi, the first thing that we want to do is we want to pole size the amount of, or the width of material that we have in the printer. So by magically you pressing that button, it knows that we have exactly 30 inches of media in the printer. I'm doing 6 of these decals. And so what I want to do is I want to bump the quantity up to 6. And you want to put a little bit of spacing. This is vertical spacing. This is horizontal spacing. I want to give them at least, say, almost 1/4 inch. I don't need that much, but I just want to make sure that they are not touching. Next thing I want to do is just confirm that my 6 images are there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My total length is going to be 43 inches. Next thing I want to do is I want to go over to advanced options. This is where you select your output profile. My 3 profiles that I typically use are the Avery 1005 EZ 720/720. I also use the Oracle 3651 GRA 720/720 Graphics 1 profile, and I also use the Optisol Basic Banner Gloss 13-ounce 540/720. In order of fastest to slowest, less resolution, highest resolution, less ink saturation to highest ink saturation. Optisol 540/720 is the fastest and the lowest resolution profile that I will print. I generally print that on matte materials. If it's a gloss material, I typically now have to go up to the 720/720. That's the Oracle 3651 GRA 720/720 Graphics 1 profile. It lays down twice as much ink. By putting more ink down, obviously more saturation, the longer that it will last outdoors, the less likely that it's going to fade. The black typically don't have a problem with, but the yellows are very light, color. Typically it mixes 2 colors together. My black is RGB, and black will obviously mix all 4 colors depending on the profile. For this specific job, I am going to use the Oracle 3651 720/720 profile. The Avery 1005 EZ 720/720 profile puts down the most ink, but it also takes the longest to print. So my Oracle 3651, that is kind of my mid-grade. It does take a little bit longer to print, but it puts down more ink. The Optisol 540/720 doesn't put down as much ink, and depending on the print, sometimes you can see those band lines in it. So for this job, this customer, I want to give them the best that I possibly can. I'm going to do the 3651, the 720/720 profile. So we had that selected, and it's substance. So all of this is set. My labels and marks are set to black. I don't have anything else, any other options in here. The other thing that I want to double check is my contour options. So I always print, because I'm using the Sign Warehouse Q54 cutter, aka Graphtec 8600. I use the Graphtec 4 points type 1 registration marks. I have one set for all copies. In my options, I generally do my mark length at a 1/2 inch, my thickness at 0.025 inches, and my margin is 0.075 inches. That's 95% of the time what I typically use. All that looks good, set, ready to go. I'm going to center this media because I know that my gutters on the right side of the printer, it always kicks the graphic over at least 3/8, maybe a 1/2 inch. So I like to put my graphic all the way to the right side. This way it gives me enough room to put my pinch roller down this side and it doesn't miss that crop mark. This side I never have an issue with because the printer automatically moves the graphic over because of the gutter that's on that side. The job is good, set, ready to go. All we have to do is hit send. I'm going to bring up my production manager. And so here is the job that's processing. This is what it's printing. And then I can go over to my Q54 tab all the way down on the bottom. And then that is set to hold. If you click on it, it's just the contour of the circle. That's what we want. So now we sit and wait for the print. All right, the print's all done. Now we're just going to use the automatic cutter in the Mutoh, get the sheet cut off, and get it laid down on the table. One thing that I like to do using this automatic cutter, this option right here, is I like to move it, I like to bump it forward if you don't bump the media forward, it cuts it off exactly a 1/2 inch behind the crop marks. If you're contour cutting, that will not work. You have to have at least 3 or 4 inches of leading. Is that right? You have to have at least 3 or 4 inches of material after the crop marks to make sure that it has enough room in the cutter to go through its motion and actually cut. So with the print, completed printing, the only thing that I do is I just bump this. I just make sure that it moves just a little bit. Now I hit the cutting option, and now it moves it out to the crop marks way below to where it has more than enough room. Alright guys, so now that we have the print is completed, now because this is an eco-solvent printer, the ink needs to outgas. It needs to cure. And typically, depending on how much ink that you're putting on the media, it could take an hour, it could take 3 or 4 hours. Very, very rarely have I ever waited 24 hours to laminate anything. And knock on wood, never had an issue. Because of the profile that I use, the 720 profile, it puts down a little bit more ink than what the 54720 profile would. So if you were using the profile that puts down less ink, you're not going to have to wait as long. That's just the downfall to the printers, or to a solvent printer. So keep that in mind when you're doing your jobs and whatnot. But for now, this sucker's going to have to sit here for a couple hours to let it outgas before I can laminate it. So in the process of printing, things happen. Things just happen. We don't know why they do, or they're just things that are just beyond our control. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. But how we learn from and how we fix those mistakes, that makes us better printers. So this is what happened on this print. So I had an issue for some reason when this media came through. The heat actually made the edge curl. And when it curled, it went underneath the pinch rollers. And so you can see this mess right here. I cleaned some of it up. Essentially, the piece rolled over top and I had some adhesive on here. So there was about this much area to where it was folded over. You can kind of see some of the creases and back in through there. But what it did is it picked up some fibers and it actually drug some ink back across the media. I need to clean this up before it's laminated. What I do is I just take my little rag here. I got some rubbing alcohol. Get the edge of your rag wet. And so we just want to clean all this off with alcohol. And we want to do it before it cures. We do not want to interfere with the crop mark. We just want to get all the extra black marks and nastiness off of around the crop mark. And sometimes you have to use a maybe a Q-tip or something just to make sure that you get it, because this actually was a mess. But we're going to clean it up and just want to get as close as we possibly can to that crop mark without rubbing any of that ink off. So again, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. All right, guys, so it's been about 4 or 5 hours, give or take or so, and prints are done. Got my laminate unrolled on the table. I got the sheet cut so I can get this stuff laminated, and I'm going to show you how that process works. So when I cut the laminate off, just make sure that you have enough that you can cover all 4 crop marks, and you also need about 2 or 3 inches down here on the bottom so that it lays on top of the media and it lays on top of the surface that you're laminating to. Also going to grab my big squeegee and another little squeegee. One thing that I do to get the pieces to separate the laminate from the backer is put a piece of masking tape on the one side and another piece on the other side. I'm going to take that masking tape off. Static on that. Again, you want to make sure that all 4 crop marks are covered with the laminate. Make sure that your laminate is squared up on your print. And then I just take my regular 4-inch squeegee just to get this started. I do a corner. Make sure I grab my Swiffer, wipe off any dust that may have settled on the laminate or the print. Take my big squeegee, soft side to the print, and start rolling up my laminate. Again, I'm going to take my Swiffer, get off any dirt or dust that may have settled from sitting. Sometimes 2 hands work better. All right, so now we're all done squeegeeing, and it's normal when you squeegee with the big squeegee to get some of these little bubbles. It's basically just what we call silvering, and it will come out. So like these little guys here, like I said, they'll take a little bit of heat once it sets for a little bit. But also what I'll do is I'll take the Teflon side, squeegee down to get rid of a lot of those little bubbles. And then trim off the excess laminate. Now it's ready to cut. So I want to do a test cut before I go ahead and I send this job. That way I don't have to cut it twice. Generally on 5 to 6 mils, I'll run the force about 24. I'm still using the 45-degree blade. It's close, but not good enough. There we go. So my force is set on 26, but again with a 45-degree blade. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to get our crop marks aligned with the pen holder, and essentially you just use the arrow keys to get the pen where you want it on the inside of the mark, and then click origin. And now we go over to Flexi so that we can send the file. Again, we go over to our Q54, and all the way down here at the bottom where it says holding, this is the job that we need to cut. So we want to right click, send, and then it'll just ask you to confirm that the pen is sitting on top of the crop mark, and then you click OK. So now it reads the crop marks. And remember, this is the corner that we had issues with, so hopefully it finds it. Good. Good deal. And that's it. Job is cut. It's ready to weed. Once it's weeded, it just gets packaged. These don't get masked just because of the thickness of them. Generally, you would want to mask something if it kind of falls on itself. Like I said, this material with a laminate, I think it's about 8 to 9 mils thick, which should stay fairly rigid so it won't fall on itself. Yeah, so in a nutshell, guys, that's it. That's my basic workflow for printing and contour cutting. Not necessarily a setup, but I hope this helps you guys out. If you have any questions, obviously leave them in the comments below. I'll be sure to get back with you. If this video was helpful, please give me a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe if this information was helpful to you. Again, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time, Signfolk.